Episode 166, Above Ground Podcast, For the Love of Stephen, with Sarah Lyn.
Disclaimer. The hosts of this podcast, Timothy Patrick and Will Foley, are by no means medical professionals. However, having lived experience with mental illness themselves, they have gained useful perspectives on common mental health issues that some of us struggle to overcome on a daily basis. By sharing their stories, they hope to create connection. By creating connection, they hope to help you find your purpose. And through purpose, we can all begin to build the foundation for positive mental health. This is Above Ground Podcast.
Coming at you live with real conversations about mental health from the perspective. It's time for Above Ground Podcast. Now your hosts, TPP and Will Foley.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to Above Ground Podcast.
Above Ground Podcast, because you can't serve below.
You know who that is. You down with TPP. Dude, I just don't have it this morning. I'm just not awake enough yet.
Invalidating TPP. Jesus. Right off the bat.
Give me a break, dude. Fucking brain validating. Why? You didn't get my name right. You're invalidating me. Yeah.
So we're here on Zoom, Will. So what does that mean?
That means we have another fine interview for everyone. That's right. Inner, I-N-N-E-R, because we get to open up everybody's beautiful minds and talk about mental health. But today we're actually going to talk about something that really we haven't really talked enough about, but we are going to be talking more about this year as we have other guests coming on to talk about the same exact thing, and that's overdoses. And that's because our guest Sarah is putting on a big event on August 31st, which happens to be International Overdose Awareness Day. The event will be going on at the Hangar on the Hudson in Troy, New York. And Sarah has a story, and she has been awesome enough to come on and share her story of loss and hope and everything. And Sarah, thank you very much for coming on this morning.
Thank you guys for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Absolutely. We're happy to have you. So tell us about For the Love of Stephen, which is your event that's going on August 31st.
Yeah, so it's a fundraiser / benefit for and on the actual day of International Overdose Awareness Day. Stephen is the father of my daughter. She'll be 8 in about, the countdown is 7 days. He passed away at his home in Waterford on August 31st. The official cause of death we got back on his 45th birthday, which was about 4 months later. And it was of fentanyl overdose. Stephen was, I saw him when I was 12 years old in 7th grade in Spanish class. He kicked me, and I was just a big fan ever since. I don't know, it was a kind of a strange connection that I had with him. He left behind 2 grown adult children and Veda. And it's just such a horrible and angering thing to find out that something like fentanyl took this man that had his problems, but was in no way, done with life. And I don't want to be quiet about it anymore. I don't want other people to feel like they have to be quiet about it or, have to hide the fact that this person suffered and self-medicated to the point of their own demise. So that's what International Overdose Awareness Day is about. It's reducing stigma. It's opening up conversations. It's letting people grieve openly and without shame, and hopefully keeping it from happening to another person.
Very powerful. Very powerful.
Yeah, I think I'm going to throw up.
Well, we don't use the video, so don't worry about it.
No, it's okay. It's hard to talk about, but it needs to be talked about. So I just get sweaty when I have to tell the story.
Well, yeah, you don't have to share anything you don't want to share.
No, I want to share it all. I do.
Okay.
This is kind of what we do here as well, is open up stories, open up conversations a little bit further than the typical everyday conversation. So but like you said, it's because we don't want to be quiet either. And the same thing with suicide is it's kind of a touchy subject. Even the word itself brings on, you know, certain feelings for different people. But I think Will and I both agree that by talking about it more, you know, it can lessen that stigma.
And Sarah, you said something very interesting about the obituary, and I don't know if it was as we were rolling or if it was prior to us rolling, about how a lot of times in the obituaries that deaths are, oh, this was a sudden death, or this was unexpected, or this, that, and the other thing. And we find that a lot with suicide also, is that we don't want to talk about why the person actually died, because there's a lot of shame and stigma that comes with
Yeah.
that. What has been one of the hardest things to wrap your head around as far as all of this goes? Is it the stuff that's left behind? Is it the stuff left unsaid? Is it a little bit of everything?
Death in all ways, it's just it's a business. It can turn ugly. Yeah, what's hard to wrap my head around is if I could have done something, like the guilt of him self-medicating, or something I need to say about Steven is that he was a genius, artistic, played guitar beautifully, was in the process of starting like his own business, making collages that were just like mind blowing. But he also suffered. He had ADHD, he had anxiety, depression, all stemming from things that, brain chemistry and also just life. That feeling of, well, if I was there, I could have stopped it. Or, if I knew by not shutting him out because he had these problems, I was trying to shield my daughter. Had I not done that and been there with him, maybe it wouldn't have happened. That's the hardest thing that I've had to deal with, the guilt.
Yeah, guilt is a terrible thing. However, shielding someone from someone else's choices is actually very strong on your part. I know it doesn't feel very strong to you, but it is very strong to
Yeah,
provide her some
I mean,
protection. The idea is,
he,
at least in my own opinion, and then when she's
yeah,
old enough to understand what he had to face himself, then you can be a lot more open with her. But
yeah,
I
and I think what really added to it too, which is crazy, and I've looked it up. He had to go to rehab 3 times, and this was for alcohol. But he also had to come off of Suboxone, which he was actually prescribed because he had previously had a problem with pills due to an old injury that, like many people, they take it as prescribed, but then get addicted to it. So he went on a program to get on Suboxone to break that. So when he went to rehab for alcohol the first time, they made him get off of Suboxone. And ever since that happened, it did something for him chemically, for his depression, for his like ADHD, that nothing else did. And once he was off of Suboxone, everything changed. And it's weird because he wanted to get off of Suboxone. He didn't want to be dependent on anything, but it really did something for his brain chemically that changed. And then he just turned to alcohol, and it just got worse and worse and worse, to the point where I did have to remove myself and Veda from him. And yeah, and then it just, he was left to his own devices. Oh, and the third time when he came out of rehab, it was full on pandemic. It was March of 2020. And the amount of overdoses, whether it be opioids, heroin, or anything else during the pandemic, like did a crazy spike. And apparently in 2021, it's not spiking as it was, but it's higher in 2021 than it was in 2020. But I think it's all, when people ask how he died, they say, oh, it was 2020. Was it COVID? And I was like, well, technically not COVID, but I call it COVID related.
coming out of rehab, and you said he did 3 stints in rehab.
Yeah. The
This was
first was the first was mandated by his job. The second he went independently, and the third he had no choice to go
did
because he
he
had gotten fired.
you talk a lot about self-medication, and
Yeah,
obviously he had ADHD and depression. Was he
yeah.
under Was he under any medical care for the mental health stuff?
We went to counseling for a short time, but we had just moved to Brooklyn. I didn't have a steady job just yet, so we were really low on extra money, and we found that almost everything what for mental health was not covered by insurance. It was out of pocket, or you would have to pay for it and get reimbursed, and we just didn't have the money. That's something that I have a real problem with too, with healthcare.
Yeah, healthcare. That's part of the issue with not having national healthcare either. That you don't, not everybody gets the same, and some people don't get things covered and everything else. We've talked a lot about insurance lately, with
Yeah.
with providers and people's fighting to get help that they need, because most people don't have $150 a friggin' week to pay for.
And then also like childcare to be able to go somewhere for an hour, because you don't want even a 2-year-old kid. You think they don't know they can't sit there and listen to you and talk about your problems. You know what I mean? That's just
No,
like
no,
them
no, no, no.
absorbing, like, they don't want to see mom sitting there crying, but like, so you got to pay 150 to go see the person, and then you got to pay somebody else to watch your kid.
Yeah.
It's like we just sacrificed that, even though we knew we both needed it.
Sarah, you had mentioned actually to me before about you kind of schooled me a quick class on fentanyl. I was wondering if you could share a little bit about that, just because, as you said, that's what was, I guess, listed as the cause of death for Stephen. And
Yeah, it was.
it was just an eye opener for me hearing from you that the small amount of it and what it can do. So if you can share that, it'd be great.
Sure. Like I said, they initially, when I got the phone call, they said he died of a heart attack. And I was like, that's nonsense. He may have been, abusing his own body, and, he didn't look great, but I was like, I know it's not that. So when we did get the results back, like I said, on his 45th birthday, October 29th, and it came back as fentanyl. I don't remember who exactly told me. I feel like it was one of the cops, but they said that the amount in his system was surprisingly small for an overdose. The Albany DA came to the school that I work at and did an example of the amount of fentanyl that can kill you, and they showed like two look like salt shakers, and the heroin in the salt shaker like kind of covered the bottom of the shaker, and then they showed, and that was like an overdose amount of heroin, and then they showed fentanyl, and it was literally like, it looked like just like a little bit of salt that you put on your food. And it was, their hashtag was one pill can kill, and they weren't going after, people who are abusing drugs. They were going after you're going to a party, somebody hands you a pill, and you can't tell the difference between a pressed pill and a pill from a pharmacy. And that if you have no tolerance and you're not like, a regular user, because we know people do straight fentanyl because they have a tolerance. If you have no tolerance, that tiny amount can be enough to just, put you under. I'm glad that they're doing this at the schools, because kids these days, they're doing pills. They're doing pills. We didn't do pills. We did other stuff, which was horrible for us too. But the pills, because they're in pill form, they're like, oh, it's from a doctor, it's from a pharmacy, but it's not necessarily from a pharmacy, and the kids don't know that, and that's what can kill you. I will never know exactly what happened and what Stephen took to make him overdose, but at this point, I just want to talk about it in any form, because they're putting that shit in everything.
That's the word, that they're putting it, mixed it with everything. And I've heard some pretty bad stories about people, getting things off the street and having bad reactions that literally shut their entire brains down, and like they become vegetables. We got duped into believing that pharmaceutical companies were actually we're actually making good stuff. And there are reasons to have these drugs in controlled ways, but I can speak from my own personal struggles with chronic pain myself. and haven't had to have neck surgery and everything. My doctor luckily didn't prescribe me a lot of things, and I'm not a pill. I don't like to take pills. I don't even like to take the stuff I'm prescribed normally. So I don't have a problem with needing to take pills. But I will say this: there's been stuff that I've been prescribed that could easily, and like I got prescribed Adderall, and Adderall, let me tell you, in my brain, Adderall could become a really bad addictive thing because I can see it and I can feel it, and I know myself, and I know myself having that little thing in me that goes, I could use this for a lot of other things. And it's so I get where people have those issues as far as not knowing what's gonna send them out of control. So self-medicating can be a really bad slippery slope into things. But when you have chronic pain on top of that, you said he had some injuries, some prior injuries.
Yeah, in high school, he actually did a little clip. A friend of ours, Jesse, was making a documentary about the pharmaceutical companies. It was it's not finished. She said she's going to revisit it, but it was called Death in a Bottle. And Stephen was one of the first ones that she interviewed. And he talked about breaking his collarbone in a high school soccer game. And that's how he was first prescribed opioids. And he, he liked them. Like, I had foot surgery and I was prescribed Vicodin, and I was like, oh, I got this stuff, I'm going to try it. Everybody talks about it. And it just doesn't vibe with my, like, I didn't get a high from it at all. Like, but for his brain, it did something. He could concentrate, he could work, he could work all night. It was almost like cocaine for him. And it leveled him out. And which is why he got addicted to it.
Yeah, what levels one person out may send the other person running down the street.
Yeah, I would just fall asleep.
Yeah, I have that same reaction to certain things. Like I know
but that's part of the problem, right? Though, I mean, like, we can't, we like, if the doctors or whoever didn't prescribe anything, then we'd be mad at them for not prescribing anything. So
right,
it's hard for.
But there was a lot of stuff that's come out in the last couple of years that have said that they knew these things were super dangerous, and they kept telling everybody they weren't dangerous. That's the thing. Like, if you listen to all this stuff that went on with the company that put out the painkiller that literally that they don't want to pay anybody about, they kept telling everybody, oh, it's safe, we prescribe it, it's good. And it wasn't. They knew it wasn't. They knew it was addictive. They knew that people who had issues already could become even more addicted very fast. And the thing is that a business model doesn't work unless you have customers. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter whether it's street drugs or if it's legal drugs. But the legal drugs, as we find out, are a lot more dangerous. And then that makes the street drugs have to keep up with the legal drugs, so then they have to make them more dangerous. At least that's the way it appears anyway. But
the common story that I keep seeing, because, like, I love documentaries, I watch everything I can find about it, but it's get prescribed pills, get addicted to those pills, run out of refills for those pills, still need the pills, get the pills off the street that are like, oxys back in the day were going for like $30-$40 a pill. And then that starts to dry up, or you can't afford it anymore. So the next step is, something like heroin, or, pills pressed with fentanyl, so that they can be cheaper, but they still make their money on the street. And that's the downward spiral that happens to people. And it can happen to anybody. It can happen to a mom. It can happen to, a lawyer. It doesn't have to be some junkie on the street. But next thing you know, the only way that they can get over this sickness, because it's a dope sickness. I watched Stephen try to get off Suboxone. He was going to meet my dad for the first time. And he was like, I'm going to kick it. I'm going to kick it myself. He just halved it down. He was literally taking this much, and he was sweating. He was sick to his stomach. And he's like, I can't meet your dad like this. And I was like, what are you trying to prove by, if you're prescribed the Suboxone, like you're not selling it, you're not abusing it, you're keeping yourself from being sick. But, you know, he had that stigma. He's like, I don't want to be dependent on anything. And that was his mindset. But then unfortunately, he became dependent on something else because it just replaced the Suboxone. And what replaced it was vodka. And, you know, it was really bad, like really bad.
I think we see that a lot, whether we realize what it is or it isn't. I think that is a loop that is definitely happening more than we know. I guess, would you, going back to what you kind of just said, I need to play devil's advocate just for a second. And if someone is, what's that? No, I'm not.
Bring it to you.
It's a question. That's all it is.
Okay.
Don't take it anything more. As the person who is looking for the next thing and falling down that spiral, is it somewhat of their responsibility to speak up and tell somebody like, hey, like I either need more of X prescribed because the pain, or hey, I feel like I'm headed down a dark slope here.
I mean, when you're in that position, you're not thinking about that at all.
True.
You know what you're supposed to do and what you shouldn't do. But your brain has a way of making it okay. Like, what's the word I'm looking for?
Justifying
it. Thank you. So, you know, thankfully Stephen never, and he told me this once, he's like, I hate needles. So, you know, heroin, I'm never going to do dope. Never. Thank God. So he didn't go down that path at all. I don't want to misrepresent his memory, but you know, it's just the general thing that happens. But when there's always a lot of lies and cover up because there is shame. And the first thing that, you know, we as friends and family of these people need to do is to not make them feel worse about it. To be like, okay, yes, you know, I want to help you. You have a problem, but you know, the shaming doesn't really help always. Or the like, oh, they're gonna get mad if they find out I relapsed. They're gonna get mad. I can't let them know. I need to hide it. You know, so yes, it is their responsibility to do so, but it very rarely happens, in my experience.
No, I get that. I guess maybe the question should be is how can we, on both sides, because I think there has to be responsibility on the other person as well, like you said, is to tread lightly and not trying to shame or get mad or bring on extra weight to that person. Yeah. So how, in your opinion, how can we get that conversation? What are better ways to approach that conversation? Well,
and this is where I don't know. There's not an easy answer. Just like, you know, everybody's talking about gun reform. There's just no easy answer. I thought I did what I thought I needed to do. I was like, you know, I spent a weekend with him during the pandemic, upstate, and you know, I missed him, and Veda missed him, and we spent a weekend together. I thought that by, you know, keeping myself and Veda from him would make him realize that he needed to change, because he said himself, I need to change. I know I do. And, you know, we were hanging out that weekend and there was a bottle of vodka in his pocket. And, you know, the first thing he said to me when I pulled up was, he's like, do you have any beer in your car? And I'm like, why would I have beer in my car? Like, what are you talking about? So like, you know, I thought tough love would help. It didn't. I'll never know if it was, you know, something that I could have changed or not. So I don't have an answer for you, Tim. I really don't.
No, that's okay. And I'm not trying to personalize it for your situation. I'm in general trying to help, you know, obviously others. Cause like you said, for your situation, self-love didn't help. And just hearing your thoughts on it and what's swirling through your head, like, did I do the right thing? Or should I have done this? You know, it's like you said, there is no one easy answer for sure, but I was just looking for some kind of, you know, takeaway, I guess, that we can, I mean, you know, that people can do.
I think that everybody should just, you know, even though there's no easy answer, it's something that it is a good question. It's something to think about. You know, what might work for one person may not work for another. It's crazy how like independent and individual all these types of things are.
Because there's no playbook for this. Just like there's no
Oh no.
playbook. Just like there's no playbook for suicide either. It's one of those real gray areas that a lot of people don't want to talk about because they don't know what to do. And a lot of people don't want to be responsible. I'm going to put that right out there right now. Most people, I will say this, most people don't have the capacity and I don't, and maybe that's an overestimation. Maybe more people have the capacity than I think, but knowing from the stories that I've heard and the things that happen in reaction to a lot of things, most people they don't want to deal with it because that means they have to be involved. And as we know, this world has become very self-centered. And even this space is a very self-centered space at times too. So it's like people say that they want to help, and then when they don't know what to do, that's one level of it. And then there's the other level of it. Well, fuck, if I know what to do, then that means I got to be responsible and get involved. And most people don't want to get involved, which is sad because that means we lose more people like Steven and like the hundreds of people that we're going to lose today. Because I don't have any numbers, unfortunately.
I have one number, actually. I was just going to say, according to the National Institute of Drug Abuse, it's 130 per day in the U.S.
130 per day people die of overdoses per day. Does it say of what? Is that like specific, or is it just
no? It's nothing
review?
Specific. It's just a drug overdose. It doesn't. It doesn't say.
Because I mean, granted, I will sort of say this. I've realized that sometimes these addictions that we get involved in are slow attempts at suicide in my estimation sometimes. And then other times, they are death by misadventure or whatever. And other times, again, like you said, did Steven have any other underlying health issues besides?
No, he actually used to brag about it. So every time you go to rehab, and like I said, he went 3 times. They do like a full, and he would always say, it's like, yeah, the doctor said like, my blood pressure's great, and every single time he was so proud of it. And I was like, well, yeah, good for you, but you still have to deal with this issue that you have. He was healthy. He was 44 at the time of his death. He had ADHD, which I wanted to talk about because ADHD, I think, is something that is really misunderstood. He needed to stay busy, and the pandemic was it was the worst thing possible for him. He wasn't working. He couldn't go anywhere. Nobody supposedly could come around. I know that he did have a small group of friends over, but it's like, what you can't sit and stare at the walls. Not for someone like him. He needed to stay busy, but at the same time, he couldn't focus on one thing. So with ADHD, basically, it's meant a lot of times people just think like you're hyper, you can't focus on anything, you're flighty. But really what it is that you're super focused on everything at once. So it's like if you're at in a loud place, like you can hear every single conversation and you don't know which one is the most important to focus on. You don't have the ability to rank from high priority to low priority. So you end up giving all your attention to everything at different times. And it makes you seem like you're, not paying attention. But meanwhile, you're super paying attention. Your brain just can't tell you what's most important, which I find very, very, very informational on how people then use something like a depressant like alcohol or opioids to calm your brain down so you can get some rest. It's exhausting for people with ADHD, and they are, and then if you also have anxiety, that leads to that too. So I feel like that's a really important thing that needs to be addressed according, with addiction and mental health, is that ADHD is, it's a monster for a lot of people.
I agree. And I've been actually trying to get, a professional or someone that is involved, in ADHD, like a specialist, to come on and talk, because I agree. And I think what's one of the hardest things for people to realize is because you can do something one day and the next day, like you don't do it, and it could be because you're focused on something else. And one of the things that was surprising to me was the huge variable of dopamine to ADHD, because you're searching for, you know what I mean? And yeah, you might be able to do this task, but it depends on what it is that you're getting in return. It's actual, what I'm getting at is there's actual brain chemistry going on that, it's not just some person ignoring you or dismissing your, hey, put away the dishes sort of thing. There's actual stuff that's happening.
Yeah, he must have been a fly in the wall. So yeah, Steven, I used to ask him, I'm like, can you please do the dishes? And it would take him about 3 hours to complete one sink of dishes, because he would have, like, I gotta soak, I'm gonna take a break, I'm gonna have a cigarette. I'm like, dude, just do the dishes. But what I didn't understand is that, so dopamine, like you said, Tim, that's the reward, right? Like of finishing something and getting a feeling of satisfaction after finishing something.
It's not even necessarily the reward, but it's knowing that there is a reward. It's that whole, like, almost like, I guess the best way that I can explain it is the fear of death is worse than death itself. You know what I mean? It's
Okay.
that,
yeah.
It's that piece right before the reward. It's like, I'm going to get that. You know what I mean?
No, yeah, he did not have that when it came to menial tasks. And like the same sink of dishes I could do in 15 minutes. I'd be like, what? And I'd be like, what the hell is your problem? Like, why can't you do it? And I'm understanding now that, like, we were very, very similar in a lot of ways, but we were also very, very different. And I think that's what, was attractive about him to me, and me to him. We had a balance, but we also had an imbalance. But the fact that he could sit in the backyard from literally, he would sit out there till 3 a.m. since the time he'd come home. So like 8 hours, he would sit out back and meticulously put together these beautiful, amazing collages that he would cut out of magazines and things he found on the street. And they were mind blowing. And he could do that because he enjoyed it, and it was rewarding to him.
Exactly.
But things like, helping me out doing the dishes or something like that, it was like, I still have there's a bottle cleaner at the house down in Brooklyn, and it was like a refillable bottle, and he wrote on it, "I won't clean by I refuse," and it was like, it's just so him, because with ADHD also comes oppositional defiance disorder, which is when you're told you're supposed to do something, and just by being told you're supposed to do it, you will not do it. I won't.
While we're talking about this, I had to play Dr. Google here. So WebMD, what is dopamine? Dopamine is a type of neurotransmitter. Your body makes it, and your nervous system uses it to send messages between nerve cells. And it's sometimes called a chemical messenger. And you said something that made me think about this, and then that's what made me look this up. You said he broke his collarbone playing soccer.
Mm-hmm.
I absolutely love soccer. I watch it constantly. I don't play like I used to or anything like that. I've only played a little bit. However, do you know if he had a history of concussions from those games? Because the reason why I ask is because obviously with neurotransmitters, because what it says is that dopamine plays a role in how we feel pleasure. It's a big part of the unique human ability to think and plan. It helps us strive, focus, and find things interesting. But your body spreads it along 4 major pathways in the brain. So I'm just wondering this, and I would love to get somebody on who really knows about CTE. Like, I would love to talk to a doctor about CTE, because there's been so much of that in the news in the last 10 years with NFL players. And then we find out more soccer players actually have it than we think. And of course, UFC fighters, boxers, anybody that takes rapid blows to the head. And even, I would think, even for us headbangers, because again, and I know you think it's funny, But the thing is that what we don't realize is that every time our head moves back and forth, our brain is moving too.
Yep.
So
Never thought of that.
I wonder if there's any correlation to that, and if there's anybody out there that can answer that, please do.
Yeah, that would be really interesting. I do not know about, soccer is actually a crazy sport because it's super physical, and
Yes, it is.
they have ankle guards or shin guards. That's
Shin
about it.
guards, but they also
Yeah,
use their head repetitively as a tool. And
yeah.
there's been plenty of headbutts inadvertently going for a header, people getting kicked in the head. And I just wonder if that had anything to play into his, and that's what made me want to ask this question. Was
Yeah.
he diagnosed with ADHD as a youth, or was this an adult diagnosis?
I believe as a youth, definitely.
Okay.
He was the problem kid. He was, impulsive, skateboarder, BMX bikes, like
Okay, so
very
he's
very little impulse control.
right, high
He was that
action,
kid.
high
Yeah.
energy,
Hmm.
probably did sustain a concussion or two along the
I'm
lines.
sure he did.
You know what I mean? Probably jumped out his second story window just to see how it was. Like kids
I mean, he
cuz
fell out of a tree when he was 42.
oh
It
my
was,
gosh, did he really?
yeah, he said to his friend, I mean, there was alcohol involved. I was still down in Brooklyn. We had just started dating, and he was living with our friend Ian. We all went to high school together, and we I get this phone call. I'm at work. It's literally like 7 o'clock in the evening, and I get Ian on the phone, and he goes, "Sarah." I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Don't be mad." And I'm like, "What?" He's like, "Well, we were walking in the cemetery, and I tried to help Steve climb a tree because he wanted to climb a tree, and I pushed him up, but I pushed him too hard, and he fell over the other side of the branch, and he broke his hip and his wrist like really badly. He was in the hospital for about a week. So yeah, and that was as a grown man.
Oh.
So I'm sure when he
Oh,
was a youth, it
okay.
was a lot of stories like that.
I'm sure. So
And I did get mad for the record. I was like, "Are you kidding me, dude?"
well, and it's interesting because as we know about the connections to our nerves, that when they're damaged, and if they're damaged for too long, they don't come back. And
Mhm.
I often try to put that puzzle pieces together because I had neck surgery in 2019 or 2013, and I have a lot of back issues and stuff, and I noticed certain things became more intense following that than were
Oh, sure.
before. But and a lot of that could just be the life experience too. But
Sarah, you had mentioned earlier about somebody coming into your school and
Mhm.
talking. Is that something that is going to be the trend now? Like, are they going to come into more schools, do you think, or
Yeah,
is it
I
more
I
inner
think
city
so.
schools?
I think so. No, this was the Albany DA and two detectives, and they had a nice little slideshow. And again, they presented it as, we're not talking about drugs as, addicts or becoming addicts, but it's people that have
Which
done
is
it or doing
important,
it for
which
the first time. Yeah,
I think that's an
yeah,
important takeaway from that for sure. And I agree. I think that, they should be doing this, in all counties.
yeah. We actually had a visitor at Lansingburg High School. I wish I could remember his name. I should have looked it up, but he was a Celtic that became addicted to heroin. He had a great career ahead of him, was super talented, but became an addict. And now he's made it his life mission to go around to high schools. And I've never seen a speaker like this. Like, these kids were silent. They were silent. He's like, I don't want to talk about, addiction. He's like, I want to talk about before addiction. He's like, I want you to look at me as a young player and how successful I was. And I don't want you to think about using. I want you to think about the first time you do it. The first time you do it is the time that leads to you becoming an addict. So it's like, that's the important thing. It doesn't matter. We're not talking about the drug addict on the corner that you see and laugh at and like, oh, what a loser. You're talking about, like, the pretty cheerleader that decided to, pop a pill at a party a Xanax or something, and then possibly overdoses or possibly likes it too much, you know?
Sure.
It's just,
And that can
it's so,
happen.
yeah,
That can
it's so
happen.
strange to me that like I tried with this Vicodin that I got for my foot surgery, and I'm like, it's not doing anything for me. I don't get it. It's so weird how different brains process this stuff differently, and you don't know what kind of brain you have until sometimes it's too late.
Right.
When you're craving it and craving it and craving it, you know?
I'm going to ask, was it by any chance Chris Herron? Was he the Celtic?
Sounds about right. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
He's awesome.
Yeah, because
He
that's
listen,
he comes right
I
up on
cried through
this.
the whole thing. I cried through the whole thing. I was sitting there. Thankfully, I wasn't with any students. I just happened to have a free period, and I went in, and he came out and talked, and it was dead, dead. Like he was just went right for the gut with these kids, and it was perfect. And I'm like, that's what they need to hear. They don't want to, like, they were like laughing and stuff. He's like, do you think it's funny? Do you think it's funny? And he would call them out, and he wasn't coming out trying to be friends with them. He was really, really real. And I was like, holy cow, this is what every school needs.
Absolutely. I agree with that 100%, you know, at all angles. But I think I've always thought this with mental health, suicide, drug addiction, whatever it is, you know, someone that had been through it, that came out and is now doing that, trying to help and educate, inspire, whatever others is. I think that's where it's at. You know what I mean? You need to hear that, the real, true story. And again, that's one piece of it, but still, I think it holds a lot of weight.
Yeah, because drug addiction and abuse, like it's just human nature, I guess, to generalize and like be like the Dave Chappelle like scratching the neck and like, but it's like it can be anybody, and you don't know who's having that issue. I've had my own issues, and it's just it can, for the wrong person, it can lead to that one time that's too much, and then you're having overdose. I mean, we had in Rensselaer County that one day, I think there was like 8 overdoses in 24 hours. There was some bad batch that came up from the city, and
Let me ask you this really quick. I don't want to interrupt you, but it just
no, it's okay.
popped in my head, if you don't mind.
Yep.
Since this tragedy, have
Mhm.
you yourself personally, like, second thought, had second thoughts on something, like, if you're out at a party or you're out with friends and they're like, hey, are
Oh,
you more kind of conscious of it now?
yeah, I mean, I had my party days in college and 90s and the aughts and whatnot, but even people have given me like, I had a toothache, and it was like an emergency, and I needed something, and it was a Sunday, and I thought about asking people like, do you have any painkillers? But then I was like, it's always gonna be in the back of my head now, just always. And like, I literally need to see it in the prescription bottle with someone's name on it. I can't get away from the fact that there's fentanyl testing strips, but they're really hard to get. Supposedly, I've heard that they're illegal here in the States, which makes no sense because they want to, people are going to do what they're going to do. And, nobody's telling anybody to not party, because they're going to party if they want to. But it's just to be aware of where you're getting it from, what to look for in an overdose. But to make these fentanyl testing strips so difficult to get, like, what's the point? I don't understand. You should be able to know what you're putting in your body, even though you
Can
could
you
argue like,
can you
what?
just what are these fentanyl strips? Can you just kind of give our listeners a quick?
Yeah. So supposedly you're supposed to be able to take a pill and like crush it up, and it's kind of like a litmus test, I guess, almost. And you can like test the pill to see if it's laced, if it has fentanyl in it.
Yeah, weren't they
Um,
trying to do that at like shows, like at fish shows and stuff, where they were trying to test the MDMA and
yes.
stuff for
So they, yeah. So
for purity as far as stuff goes? Like, was it something
yeah,
like that?
yeah, and supposedly, a friend of mine was telling it, and I should have like looked up what happened was that they didn't want, like, they're like, no drugs, but like, if you're gonna do drugs, test it. And then they were like, they made it illegal so that the festivals couldn't do that, but it's kind of like counterproductive in my mind. Like,
So is that why they're making it illegal, or it is illegal because they think that
that's what I was
it's
told.
promoting drug use, maybe?
Yes, exactly. It's kind of like, people that are like, why is there sharps containers in the steward's bathroom? It's like, well, wouldn't you rather there be a sharps container in the steward's bathroom rather than the steward's person taking out the garbage gets stabbed with a needle? You know what I mean? Like, it's that kind of thing. So
Yeah,
it's like,
I'm with you. I mean, anything on yes.
people are going to do what they're going to do, and we're never going
And
to change that.
and I think that's why educating and talking about it
Right.
more is helping. I think it's what is needed.
I feel like I'm never going to shut up about it now, because I can't explain to you guys the amount of anger of something that I already knew in the back of my in the bottom of my heart, in the back of my brain. When we got the final results, I knew that's what it was. I knew he didn't just have a heart attack. That was ridiculous. And the amount of anger and we're going on 2 years now. Next month, July 31st, will be 2 years, and I I I will never be the same.
And not
And
go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
no, please go ahead. I'm just saying.
Well,
I don't want to take away from Stephen and that story that you're telling, but something that we should obviously ask you is, how are you doing, and is there things that you are kind of doing or pursuing to keep you on that wellness side of things?
Yes, that is a good question, because I would say overall I'm not doing well. I tried talking to somebody, but everything is like, they're like, well, if you want to get in sooner, you can do telehealth, which was great. I tried it, but it's just not my thing. It was awkward. I didn't really vibe with the guy. I'm still in search of someone else to talk to. Like I said in the beginning, I go through a lot of periods of like regret and questioning myself and my decisions and how I dealt with him. I have a lot of trouble focusing. So, like, for example, I was supposed to forward his mail right after he passed, and it took me about 8 months to do that, to do the paperwork. I'm still paying for his cell phone bill. There's paperwork I have to do that I just have a lot of trouble doing. So it's like a lot of denial still, which is tough. Thankfully, I have Veda, who is like so much like him, and as a reminder of him as a kind of a freer spirit than what ended up, pulling him down throughout his youth and growing up. He had a lot of trauma, and that was not addressed. And on top of that, he was an artist, and we all know artists usually kind of have a difficult life because they just operate. He was just operating up here on a different level, and that's what I loved about him. That's what everybody loved about him. He referred to himself as an alien. He's like, greetings, Earthling, or a pirate. He was just different, and people like that have a harder time traversing the normal quote human experience. And I think that they're the people that are usually the most prone to these kinds of tragedies.
Sarah, I can't thank you enough for sharing Stephen's story with us and this morning. Before we finish up, why don't you tell everybody about this event that's coming up for the love of Stephen?
Oh yeah,
And
I'd love to. So it'll be Wednesday, August 31st at Hangar on the Hudson. We've got 3 acts. We have Curious Comet, which is Nikki Chaos, who also went to high school with Stephen and myself. Then Raisinhead will be performing. And then we have their first show ever in the Capital District, Lizzie and the Makers from Brooklyn, New York. Special guest will be Reeve Gabriels, who's also a member of The Cure and has played with David Bowie. He actually lives in Troy, which is crazy. He is
That
their
is crazy.
producer. Yeah,
Troy is super cool and eclectic again, though.
yeah, no, I love it. I'm proud to be from Troy.
Me too.
Um, yeah.
This is my saying. You can take the boy out of Troy, but you can't take Troy out of the boy.
Oh, yeah,
I will
believe
be
me.
Troy.
Bitch, please, I'm from Troy.
She said, "Bitch,
So,
please."
Bitch, please.
so yeah, that's gonna be the lineup. I'm thinking it'll be like from 6 to 11 because it is a school night. Well, not school night, but a work night. But it's the Wednesday before Labor Day, so hopefully everybody will be in like party mode, and we're gonna have some silent raffles, silent auctions, whatever they're called, some raffles. Someone wants to come and do just a little bit of a speaking about addiction and overdose. I do realize it's kind of ironic to have it at a bar when we're talking about addiction, but nobody's telling anybody what to do with their life. We're just asking people to be responsible and to think about things before they impulsively do them.
And
Everybody's gonna party.
on a side note, addiction isn't specific to alcohol. I'll say that.
True. Yep. So yeah, I'm hoping to have a really fun time, and if it works out, I'd like to do it annually. I wanted to do a slideshow of if people would submit pictures of their loved ones, because it's not just about Stephen, and maybe a little story about them. I'd like to put up a slideshow just to honor these people, just because they we lost them due to addiction and overdose doesn't mean that they shouldn't be remembered and celebrated as the person that we knew them as. They shouldn't be defined as their overdose. They should be defined as a brother, a sister, a best friend, an acquaintance, a buddy that, we all still are missing and feel the loss of. And that's why, for the love of Stephen, but no, it's also for everybody. It's for the lost, everybody that's lost somebody.
Timmy, wow.
Yeah, that hits home, and I hope that someone hears this and maybe can take away something from it. I do want to mention that we had Will and I also a year ago, I think it was episode 106, we did Moth to Flame. We talked about a little bit about the comorbidity with the addiction and drug use, abuse with mental health.
Yeah, there's a big comorbidity part of it, and there's programs, MICA, mental illness, chemically addicted. That's like, those are programs that people can go to, and there's a lot of people in those programs. And again, addiction comes in all forms, shapes, sizes. It runs the scale of socioeconomic. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter where you think you are in life or where you think you should be in life. It can hit you and it can destroy you. It can destroy everybody around you. But it doesn't have to. It doesn't have to. And there is help out there. And it's a difficult road, just like anything is. It's not easy to overcome. But there are resources out there. Project Safe Hope here in New York is a big project that they're trying to Project Safe Point, which is harm reduction stuff, which I'll include in the show notes, and I'll include whatever else I can find as far as addiction and recovery goes. Don't forget Healing Springs in Saratoga Springs. If you're in Saratoga area, Healing Springs is an amazing nonprofit. Tim and I have a close relationship up there with those folks, and they're amazing. And that they will really help. We're going to have one of their counselors on, one of their peer specialists on pretty soon also, who's become a friend of mine, who has an amazing story of recovery also. Sarah, thank you so much for being here. We always finish up the show with 3 questions. So, Timmy, fire away, buddy.
Sarah, do you have a favorite or a least favorite word?
Oh, I have a favorite word.
Let it rip.
Favorite word. Dickhole.
Well, we ain't heard that one before.
Not?
No.
Oh,
no,
it's
that's
very
not the
satisfying to say.
That's not one of the ones that I would have thought. That's a first.
No, yeah. When you're angry at something, stop being such a dickhole.
Wow. I like that. That's pretty funny.
Don't you dare.
Now I gotta ask, what's your least favorite word? Because
Oh, geez. Fern.
what is it?
Fern.
Fern?
Fern. Well, yeah, like the
Like
fern.
like the
I just
like the
hate.
plant.
Yeah.
Oh,
Fern.
that's
Okay.
my cat's name. Wow. All right.
But I think we all talked about how we don't like cats at the beginning, didn't we?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, you're just that's you. That's
No,
not me.
technically his cat's name is Fernando, so let's not get crazy.
Oh, but I like Fernando.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
Hernando Guerrero. It's the Fernando from Fuller House. My daughter named the cat, so
Oh, okay.
yeah. So she wanted to name him
I
that.
just won't call him Fern. I'll call him Fernando.
There you go.
That's fun to say. Fernando.
Fernando. It is fun to say, right?
Fernando. That's fun to say.
Fernando.
Oh. I've changed this. I changed this question up every
Okay.
show now, so I'm gonna ask you something more specific to you. What is something that you didn't know about yourself prior to going through all this that you've learned?
I didn't realize that I had as many mental health issues as I actually do because his were so extreme that he was we were generally like he was the crazy one and I was the like oh, no, come on let's be normal, but I also have my own mental health addiction issues that I need to address that I don't think has overshadowed mine. um but now he's not here and I'm reflecting. I'm not perfect. And not that I ever thought I was, but I could be in danger of going down the same path as him because of, grief, depression, wanting to forget about things um, that are stressful because I am under a lot of stress. I'm in three places at once trying to deal with his estate. I still have my apartment in Brooklyn. I'm here in Troy. I have my daughter. I have a new job. I'm making a lot less money, so I have a lot of stress, and sometimes that can lead to doing the same thing he was doing, and I have to continuously remind myself that I'm not exempt from what he felt too.
Wow, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
That's wow, that's deep. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for opening up like that.
That's why I'm here.
So, Sarah, if there was something that you would like to see done or that you could do for mental health as a whole without any kind of restraint, what would it be?
I love the fact that I know this is a hot topic issue, but you know, critical race theory, talking about different types of families in school. I know that people have a lot of hot feelings about that, but I think that if we are going to enter that into the discussion, we also need to talk about mental health as young as elementary school, recognizing things. I work in special education, and when I was in school, we had the one room where all the R word people were. But I think that inclusion and talking about things at a very young age reduces stigma of mental health, and thereby will reduce self-medication and um, just trying to deal with things by themselves because you don't have a word to describe how you're feeling. If you're aware of that as a young person, that might not happen.
Nice, love it. And the people who don't want to talk about critical race theory also don't want to talk about mental health. So
Right.
that's quite the conundrum there. So yeah, let's think about
But
that,
yeah,
people.
if you ostriches, you stick your head in the sand, it's not going to go away.
Right, that's what we'd rather do. Just like we've been doing for the last fucking 2,000 years. Let's stick our heads in the sand and not acknowledge what we've done. Right, exactly. Sweep it under the rug. Let's create more stigma.
Well, I think, yeah, I think it actually kind of it goes in hand because Sarah, as you were saying, like, talk about emotions with these kids and talk about things that we don't talk about. And I think that kind of goes hand in hand because I think a lot of people don't know how to deal with difficult emotions. They just can't do it.
Right.
And they shy away from it. So either they stick their head in the sand, or they find a bottle, or whatever it is that they use as a distraction. That's what they do. And I think I personally feel that is the foundation of most of it.
That's why I'm planning on, like I said, I'm hoping to do this every year with the focus on maybe a different lost person, and
That's awesome.
to give that family some financial help, because the financial strain of losing someone, quote unquote, suddenly, when you're 44, you don't think you need a will. Oh, that's another thing. Just make a will, especially if you have a kid. Make a will. I would love to be able to do it and have a different family benefit from it each year.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's huge.
That's awesome. And AGP will support you in whatever we need to do. So
cool, man. Thanks.
You're welcome. Thank you for being here. Timmy, wow, another great conversation.
Another great conversation for the love of Stephen.
For the love of
Thank
Stephen.
you. Thanks, guys.
Get well.
Be safe.
Stay
above.
There we go.
Thank you for giving us a listen. New episodes every Wednesday. If you listen on Apple Podcasts, you can share, rate, review, and even subscribe so you'll never miss an episode. Other ways to support the show: follow us on social media, share the content, share our episodes. You can also buy us a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/abovegroundpod. For further concerns, show ideas, or just to say hi, you can email us at abovegroundpodcast@gmail. Once again, thank you for listening and supporting mental health. Keep the conversation going and stay above.